Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayana Namaskritya Naram Chaim Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraya Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. So continuing with the discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 3, Text 35. Shri Piplaji is answering the question of Maharaj Nimi about he wanted to know about Lord Narayan, and along with Narayan also Brahmjyoti and Paramatma, Brahman and Paramatma. So we started the commentary purport, and from the middle of the purport we're going to pick it up. The word ahetu may also be understood in another way. So there was two words, hetu and ahetu. So hetu means he is the cause. Krishna is the cause of everything. Ahetu means he doesn't have a cause. He's a source of everything. But he doesn't have a cause. The word ahetu may also be understood in another way. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says, Aparayam itastvanyam prakritim vidhi me bhava. The conditioned living entities, Jivbhuta, desire to engage in sense gratification with their material senses. Thus, the creation of the material world becomes necessary. In fact, the material cosmic manifestation continues to exist because of the desires of the conditioned souls to exploit it. Yayedam dharyate jagat. The government must create a prison to accommodate those citizens who incline to criminal activity. There is no need for any citizen to live in the obnoxious condition of the prison, but because a certain portion of the population is inclined towards antisocial behavior, the prison becomes necessary. In a higher sense, the prisoners themselves can be considered the hetu, or the cause for the construction of the prison. The different way to understand it. So government doesn't want to create the prison house, but they know that some people will break the law. So for them, for their rectification, the prison houses have to be built. So prisoners are the hetu, or the cause of the construction of the prison. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead expands his internal potency according to his own desire to increase the ananda or transcendental bliss of himself and his pure devotees. But he manifests the material universe in response to the illicit desires of the conditioned souls to live a life of sense gratification in willful forgetfulness of him. Willful forgetfulness. Krishna is not the cause of their forgetfulness. They want to forget. Krishna provides a means to forget. Krishna. Therefore, the conditioned living entities themselves can be considered the hetu, or cause of the material manifestation. The external potency of the Lord Maya, who is charged with the duty of material manifestation, is called Chaya, or the shadow of the Lord's internal potency. The Lord does not personally desire to manifest the shadow potency called Durga or Maya. The blissful spiritual planets eternally manifest, contain the best possible facilities for the living entities who are parts and parcels of the Lord. But the conditioned souls, rejecting the inconceivable, eternal living arrangements the Lord has kindly provided, prefer to seek their misfortune in the shadow kingdom called the material world. Conditioned souls, rejecting the inconceivable, eternal living arrangements the Lord has kindly provided, prefer to seek the misfortune in the shadow kingdom called the material world. We wanted to enjoy here. So Krishna gave us the material world. Thus both Durga and the conditioned living entities may be considered the hetu, or cause of the material manifestation. Since Lord Krishna is ultimately Sarva Karana Karanam, the cause of all causes, he is to be known as the ultimate superior cause. But now the Lord functions as the supreme cause of the material manifestation. It is described In the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the Lord acts as overseer and permitter. The actual desire of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is stated very clearly in Bhagavad Gita, Sarva Dharmana Parityaja. The Lord desires every living entity to give up the shadow potency, Maya, and return to the actual substance, which is the eternal kingdom of God. That's his innermost desire, but he doesn't interfere with our independence either. Although various aspects of the absolute truth are being described, the absolute truth is ultimately one, as stated in this verse, Tad Avehi Param Narendra. King Nimi inquired about Brahman, and now this verse is Yatta Swapna Jagra Sushuptishu Shad Bahishcha. The Lord's all-pervading feature within wakefulness, dreaming, and deep sleep, and his existence beyond these three mental states, are understood to be manifestations of Brahman, the spiritual potency of the Lord. Finally, the statement Dehindriyashu Hridayanti can be understood to refer to Paramatma feature of the Lord. When the Lord expands himself as Kshirodaksha Vishnu, the third of the three Vishnu features, and enters the heart of every living entity, the gross and subtle organs of the body become enlivened for continuing the chain of fruitive activity called karma. So the Lord expands himself as first is manifestation of Brahman, and then Kshirodaksha Vishnu expands as Paramatma, and that's how when it enters the heart of every living entity, then the body starts functioning. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the multifarious manifestations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead do not compromise his supremacy as one without a second. But the ultimate Supreme is ultimate. Absolute truth is Parama Vyomanatha, or the Lord of the spiritual sky, who appears as two-armed Shama Sundar, as four-armed, as eight-armed, or as having 1,000 arms. In each aspect, his body is eternal and full of bliss and knowledge. It's Satchidananda Murti. So he may appear in different forms, different incarnations, but ultimate is Krishna. That's what he's trying to say. The innumerable Vishnu expansions of the Lord are also understood to be plenary portion of Sri Krishna. Krishna Stu Bhagwan Swayam. As the Lord himself states in Bhagavad Gita, Aham Sarvasya Prabhava. So this is what Pipalayan Rishi is saying. Further he says, Natan mano vishati vagut chakshuratma pranendriyani cha yathanal alam archisha swaha shabdo api bodhak nishedhayatma moolam arthoktamah vayadrite na nishedha siddhi. Neither the mind nor the faculties of speech, sight, intelligence, the life air, or any of the senses are capable of penetrating that supreme truth any more than small sparks can affect the original fire from which they are generated. Not even the authoritative language of the Vedas can perfectly describe the supreme truth, since the Vedas themselves disclaim the possibility that the truth can be expressed by words, by the material words. But through indirect reference, the Vedic sound does not serve as evidence of the supreme truth, since without the existence of that supreme truth, the various restrictions found in the Vedas would have no ultimate purpose. So little tricky to understand, but let's see what the purport says. The small sparks generated by a blazing fire have no power to eliminate the original fire, nor can they burn it. The quantity of heat and light in the original fire is always superior to the quantity found in the insignificant sparks. Similarly, the minute living entity is generated from the internal potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as stated in Vedanta Sutra and Bhagavad Gita. The minute living entities, being unshowered sparks of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, can never equal the Supreme Godhead in the quantity of their potency. The quantity of knowledge and bliss in the Supreme Personality of Godhead is always superior Therefore, when a foolish, conditioned soul tries to illuminate the subject matter of the highest truth with his tiny brain, he merely illuminates his own foolishness. The personality of Godhead has personally spoken Bhagavad Gita, which is like the blazing fire of perfect knowledge that burns to ashes the insignificant speculations and theories of so-called philosophers and scientists regarding the ultimate truth. So on that ultimate truth, which Krishna has given us, Bhagavad Gita, since it comes from Krishna, it has perfect knowledge, and it's like a blazing fire. And whatever knowledge we have is like the sparks, little tiny sparks. So those sparks, actually, they don't count anything in front of that blazing fire. Just like a firefly, a jugnu. In the daylight, it has no value. Only it has little value when there is a dark outside. Even that jugnu cannot remove the darkness completely. Just very little spark it has, or very little light it has, and it can illuminate only very little portion. Not a whole lot. Just maybe around it, maybe 1 or 2 inches around it. That's it. But when the sun comes out, then the whole place is lit up. What to speak of a firefly, even a bulb, even if the biggest bulb that men have created, like in the stadiums we see. So how much area, although the stadium, it has hundreds of bulbs, how much area it can illuminate? It cannot illuminate the streets even outside the stadium. Forget about the whole block or the whole city. They can only illuminate little stadium. But when the sun comes out, illuminates the whole world. That is like, of course, it's not the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but just to understand the example. So we are nowhere close to Krishna, close to God, and we can never be close to God in the potency wise. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is called the Rishikesh, or the Lord of everyone's senses, because the personality of Godhead has supreme seeing power, hearing power, touching power, smelling power, and tasting power. The living entities in a limited sense can also see, hear, touch, smell, and taste by the mercy of Rishikesh. This idea is expressed in the Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad. The supreme truth is understood to be the life air sustaining everyone's life air, the vision of everyone's eyes, the hearing power of the ear, and the sustenance of food itself. The obvious conclusion is that the supreme truth can be known by his own causeless mercy and not by our foolish attempts to bring the all-pervading truth within the insignificant boundaries of our intelligence. So he can only be known by his causeless mercy. The descriptive power of speech fails in the realm of the supreme truth, and the speculative power of the mind cannot achieve him. But because such statements of Vedic Shrutis are in themselves descriptions of the absolute truth, one may consider such Vedic statements contradictory. Therefore, in the connection it is said, although the Vedic Shruti Shabda forbids us to speculate upon the absolute truth, such restrictive injunctions indirectly constitute positive assertions of the existence of the supreme living entity. In fact, the Vedic restrictions are meant to save one from the false path of mental speculation and ultimately bring one to the point of devotional surrender. As Lord himself states in Bhagavad Gita, Vedasya Sarvaraham Vedya. By all Vedic literatures, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is to be known. The assertion that a particular process, such as mental speculation, is useless constitutes an indirect assertion of the existence of a correct path of achieving the Supreme. So mental speculation is not the path, but then there is a correct path, which is following the Vedas. As Srila Siddha Swami has stated, every negative injunction is understood to have a specific limit. Negative injunctions cannot be taken as applicable in all cases. For example, a negative injunction is that no living entity can be equal to or greater than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But Bhagavatam clearly states that because of the intense love of the residents of Vrindavan for Krishna, they sometimes assume a superior position. Thus, Mother Yashoda binds Krishna with ropes, and the influential cowherd boys sometimes ride on the shoulders of Krishna or defeat him in wrestling. Negative injunction, therefore, may sometimes be adjusted according to the transcendental situation. Now, this is a completely different scenario. Negative injunction or the Vedic injunction, nobody can be equal to Krishna or better than him. But we see, as it is pointed out, Mother Yashoda binds Krishna with ropes, shows him sticks, and he is afraid of the stick in the hand of Mother Yashoda. Or the cowherd boys, sometimes they defeat Krishna in wrestling. But this is all because of love of Krishna. Krishna, the pastime is like that. Krishna lets them do it. But in tattva, in position-wise, nobody can be better than Krishna. It's just like it is explained sometimes. That's just like a father, out of his love, puts his little baby child on his shoulders. So when the baby child is on the shoulder of the father, he can say, I'm taller than the father, because his head could be higher than the father's head. But he's not taller. Father has put him on his shoulders. So we have to understand our position and what is Krishna's position. Although the absolute truth is transcendental to the material creation and therefore beyond the scope of material senses, when those same material senses are saturated with love of God, they become spiritualized and empowered to perceive the absolute truth. That is the whole idea. And that's how it's stated in Brahma Samhita. I worship the primeval Lord Govinda, who is always seen by the devotees whose eyes are anointed with the pulp of love. He is seen in his eternal form of Shyam Sundar within the heart of the devotee. So without that eyes anointed with pulp of love, nobody can see Krishna. And in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says to Arjuna, but you cannot see me with your present eyes. Therefore, I give you divine eyes by which you can behold my mystic opulence. Similarly, Srimad Bhagavatam describes many incidents in which the Supreme Absolute Truth revealed himself to his devotee, as in the histories of Prahlad Maharaj, Dhruv Maharaj, Prithu Maharaj, Kardamuni, the Pandavas, and the Gopis. Therefore, the Vedic assertion that the absolute truth is beyond the power of the eyes refers to those who have not received transcendental eyes by the mercy of the personality of Godhead. And therefore, that's why sometimes people say, the Lord is Nirakar. Because they, or whoever they are following, they have never seen God. Because they don't have those eyes with which to see God. And just because they haven't seen God doesn't mean God doesn't have form. It's their limitation, or the limitation of their understanding. That's why sometimes when we discuss or get into argument with others, they say nobody can see God. Well, yeah, from your perspective. But from our perspective, if God gives us the eyes, we can see him. What's so difficult? But one who does not have the eyes by the mercy of God cannot see him. But the Lord's own transcendental senses, which are the source of our limited senses, are confirmed in the Shruti. So he has transcendental senses. Brahman, the absolute, should be understood to be that which cannot be ascertained by the material power of speech. Speech itself is evinced by that supreme truth. So our power of speech is expressed by the absolute truth. It is clearly expressed that the absolute truth has its own transcendental senses. Therefore, he is called Rishikesha. Sri Narad Muni has stated, Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Ruchyate. Our senses cannot approach the absolute truth by their own power. But when engaged in loving devotional service to satisfy the Lord of the senses, our limited senses must become connected with the Lord's unlimited senses, and thus by the Lord's mercy, he can be understood. So again, very, very long purport. So I'll just go towards the end. It's where he says, unless they smear upon the body the dust of the lotus feet of a Vaishnava, completely freed from material contamination, persons very much inclined towards materialistic life cannot be attached to the lotus feet of the Lord, who is glorified for his uncommon activities. Only by becoming Krishna conscious and taking shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord in this way can one be freed from material contamination. So only by engaging in his service, one can be freed from contamination. Although Sri Pipalayan is expressing that the absolute truth cannot be approached by material senses, the sage himself is describing the absolute truth with transcendental senses, and King Nemi is able to understand this transcendental sound because he has surrendered at the lotus feet of pure devotees, the Nav-yogendras. Therefore, one should not foolishly try to understand this verse out of context in an impersonal way, but should follow the example of King Nemi, who was trying to understand how the Supreme Personality of Godhead is ultimately the source of everything. And with material senses, not possible to understand, but with spiritual senses, it's possible. But spiritual senses one gets when one engages his senses in the service of the Lord, and after that he gets the mercy of the Lord. Just like when we were studying the Damodar Leela, when Yashoda Maya was trying to bind up Krishna, every time the rope was 2 fingers too short. Although she tied up all the ropes in the house, and all the gopis brought the ropes from their homes, and she tied and made the rope longer and longer and longer and longer. But every time she tried to tie up Krishna with that long rope, it was always 2 fingers too short. So those 2 fingers one represents our effort. So if there is any lack in our effort, anything shortage, then we cannot attain Krishna. Of course, we don't want to tie him up, but we cannot attain him. And second finger represents his mercy. So without his mercy, no matter how much effort we put in, we cannot tie him up. So both things are required. In fact, both things are required in any field of activity. For success in any field, it needs both our effort and his mercy. Both. Sometimes we say, because of our past pious activities, or we're making so much money, or the person is very rich because he's working hard. No, not just by that. Just by working hard or having very good intelligence, one cannot achieve anything until his mercy is also there. Whether his mercy is directly his mercy for devotees, or indirectly through his representatives, such as demigods for non-devotees. But his mercy is very much required. So I guess we can stop here. See anybody has any questions or comments. Okay, you all have a safe, wonderful day. Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji.